What do you think? I mean, because I think physically it is an interesting conversation around whether you can get, I mean, and they will say yes, and all athletes can in terms of their understanding of periodization. But what do you think it does, like psychologically? Like, what do you think you do if you have to run that race where you're so relieved? Like, put yourself as even Kent now, like top of his game in the US, even McLean, who's obviously and Laura, they've done all this multiple times, but there's no way that like McLean's not relieved that they're going with Ilix, like the reasonably new partnership and supremely talented rider. But you look at then what Caracol pulls out in the last few months, and then
I
you
think they
think,
were I think they were all panicking in the US. I think
yeah,
the
of
US
course.
was under tremendous stress. And actually, I think a testament to McLean, because many, many years ago, maybe in his career, the kind of pressure that he was under in Aachen to perform on Sunday, especially he
Yeah.
jumped decent in the Nations Cup, right? Had one down, but then they didn't get to jump a second round. And then he had basically everything riding on that Sunday performance. I mean, I know McLean, he is unbelievably well seasoned in making sure that he can focus. But I think a younger, less experienced athlete would not have handled that well. I mean, he really stepped up to the plate where he not only had to sort of for himself kind of perform and say, okay, let me make sure I can actually pull this out when I need to, but also to prove to the country that, like, hey, I'm on this team. Let me show I haven't had that many rounds. I haven't had that many clear rounds on this horse. Let me show you that when the pressure's on, I can do it. So I think he really rose to the occasion. And that's,
Hmm.
that's the kind of pressure that the Olympics puts on people. And you see athletes crumble or you see them really rise above. And I think it's always fascinating at championships and in this like lead up period where you see riders that have been around for a really long time and they come out and they make mistakes that you've never seen them make before, right? I mean, they'll miss to a jump, they'll make crazy wild mistakes and you say, "What was that?" Or you'll see, wow, they really like kept it cool under pressure, ice running through their veins. Look how they just performed like it's another day at the office. And it makes for the not only the championship to be very exciting, but this like lead up period where the teams, because that pressure is just, it's such a pressure cooker, and with the other riders against each other, it's this wild experience that I think we see really top sport in the last couple of weeks. And we've seen performers that haven't gone well. Unfortunately, Yannicka Springer had a mistake in Rotterdam. I mean, she was really, I think it was between her and Pius, and she really, it was hard to say, was it really a nervous mistake? I mean, the horse spooked hard at the Liverpool and it just was an unexpected thing. But that's what you see, these like kind of wild mistakes where people under the pressure, and then you think, wow, that wouldn't have happened normally. So it's a really interesting time in the sport to watch as a fan also, because you're like, I know these horses and I know these riders, they can do it under normal circumstances, but then when it comes to the pressure of the games and trying to get on the team, and then now that they have to go, it's like you said, they have this period of relief where they're like, okay, I'm on the team, good, now we can relax. But then all of a sudden you have another 3 weeks of huge buildup to, whoa, I got to actually perform for my country. And you think it would be a more relaxed environment than maybe the cutthroat to get on the team. But I think it's equally as pressure when you get there.
What's
Hmm.
actually really interesting is I've had a look here at the horses that have jumped the most 5-star 160 rounds in 2024. And you've got Olivier Robert for France with Iglesias FCZ has jumped 20 rounds, which is the most. We have Marcus Ehning and Coolio. And then there's a couple on 14, which is like the third most rounds jumped at 5-star 160 for a horse. And two of those horses are horses that I would have imagined knew at the beginning of the season that they were already going to the Olympics. And it's Scott Brash and Hello Jefferson and Malin Bayard Johnson, NH&M Indiana. So she's jumped 14 5-star 160 rounds. So I wonder if that's the type of horse that needs rounds to kind of settle and come into the season and like prepare herself, even though she probably knew that she would be going to the Olympics, but that horse needs the round. And then when I go one down and I look at horses that have done 13 5-star 160s, I see Ben Mayer in Point Break, also a younger horse who probably needed the runs. But as you told us, Ben actually knew he was going to the Olympics. So I wonder if he knew he was going, but that he wasn't sure which horse. And he was kind of trying to see, who was going to hold up to that level and to the sport like that. But that's actually a very interesting conversation to have. 12 for Janneke Sprunger and Orly, who did have to fight for their spot and then unfortunately didn't get it. Rolf Gorang Bengtsson also 12 with Sakero. And then King Edward actually also jumped 12 5-star 160 rounds.
It's actually
enough. So it's actually some of the most that we've seen any other horses in the top 20 of horses.
I mean, speaking of that exact thing, when I was in Aachen last week, I talked to Nick Skelton and I said, I think everyone assumed Laura and Valentinu were going to be on the team. If there was anyone that was kind of sure, I think it was them. And then, she knew she was sort of on the team and she still jumped the Nations Cup and she still jumped the Grand Prix. And then I sort of said to him, I said, why are you jumping? Do you need to? And he goes, the horse needs to jump. He goes, it's better. The horse is better when they jump. And actually, we say that all the time. These are athletes. They need to be in a rhythm. It's not so simple as like, put them on ice. They're perfect. Let's just go in 3 weeks to the games. Like they need to be in a rhythm as the humans need to keep going. I mean, you see every rider going is going to show almost right up to the games. Maybe they take the 1 week off right before, but everybody is trying to stay sharp. And I think that's the case for horses also.
I think James Can-Cruz has plans to jump in the 2 and 3 stars. Maybe is it Traverse City coming up or one of those, but the plan is that some of Shane Sweetenham for Ireland, some of Shane's other horses will jump horses maybe like Combella. If you're listening, keep an eye on Combella, who'd be a big following horse for us. I think
love that horse so much. Love it.
Lovely.
Yeah. Love it. I love it to watch it. I love to see the results. I think that's an unbelievable animal.
Combella could have gone, I think, to the Olympics if it wasn't for James Can-Cruz. I think Combella would have put up a great show. He was speaking the other night and he said, my other horses will jump into 5-star and we'll bring James Can-Cruz and he'll jump in 2s and 3s up until a week before. And as you say, the riders the same. They're all off to Falsterbo, I guess, this week, and then there'll be
you got to keep going. I think it's the kind of thing that you don't just want to sit and wait, right? And then feel you almost can get rusty by like trying to not do enough. And I think the horses also maybe not having to jump 5-star level. I think we're going to see a lot of the Olympic horses jump sort of 2 and 3 stars. And maybe even I've known in past years, a lot of people use Valkenswaard, the 4-star upcoming this week as kind of final show. They can jump some smaller classes. Maybe they pop around the Grand Prix. Again, it's just to keep these horses in form because like we said, they've had to be informed for the selections and now they need to stay sharp because the games. And then also there's that period that they get there and then they have to do the vet check and they actually have to be on grounds for longer. Normally we're used to sort of having the horses at home. You train all the way up until Tuesday and then you drive Wednesday and you show Thursday and you got 2 days off between your final training at home and the show. Whereas at the Olympics, they have to be there for quite a period before and it creates even more like lag time between when you can really train the horses and feel sharp and ready.
And it's also kind of a mental game as well, because usually I'd say the majority of these riders are used to taking 3 or 4 or 5 horses to a show and they're constantly busy, but here it's just the one horse and they're just sitting there's only so many times you can exercise or ride that one horse in a day. So, it's a lot of it is mental, I think, as well, because they have to just sit with their thoughts every so often and think about, I am actually at the Olympic Games and I'm going to have to deliver and I have nothing to distract me and I just need to be in my zone. And sometimes I think that can be a bit of a spiral as well.
Oh, it is. I mean, I've jumped enough like senior championships to know that having one horse at what is just theoretically another horse show is so difficult to just sit there and you're like, can I ride them in the morning? Maybe I take them out for a lunch. Can I take them for a hand graze? Can I like ride them again in the afternoon? You're like, I want to ride. It's like you want to ride more and more and more and more to stay sharp and in it and get your head out off of sort of the pressure. But on the other hand, you see people just kind of sitting around, listening to headphones, headphones, trying to zone out and not like let all of the atmosphere get to you, but then also like wanting to do enough exercise with the horses, but obviously not going to want to make them tired. So it's not like you can just keep riding the one horse over and over. It's a really bizarre thing to be at a competition where you're used to being there doing maybe 2 or 3 classes in a day with multiple horses to just the one, and also only have 4 classes over 7, 8, 9 days of actually being in one location. It's not like, and it's 1 class a day, and it's this very difficult mental situation to sit in.
This is top sport. This is the big challenge, like you look at Richard Vogel coming out of Aachen, you look at how many rounds he's jumped. To be honest, all of them. It's just that Vogel happened to win them or podium at them all. So he gets the highlights from Aachen, but all the top riders, jumped daily, and then obviously had their often 4 or 5 horses there. So they were able to, go through the string and keep them all fit. Equally, they know everybody and they're moving around a lot and the owners are there. I think you're right when you talk about it being a mental game.
It's funny. We've been talking about all of these super strong teams, and we started with Sweden, but we're talking about pressure and this and that. We haven't even mentioned the pressure that's going to be on Henrik coming into the games, because I think Henrik, although being the horse with the highest rated ELO rating, it's just, you're talking about someone who is the reigning World Cup champion, the reigning European champion. He was the only horse to jump 6 clear rounds in the last Olympics. And now he's coming in with massive pressure on his shoulders and, as a huge favorite, I would assume. And then we talk about all these other great German riders, the Irish. There's the pressure that's going to be on Henrik, I think, is even more so than anybody else. And we haven't even touched on that. And we've touched on combinations that are super, super strong.
I think the format does not play to Henrik and King Edward's favor, because at the end of the day, it's I know you have to qualify individually, but then it's just kind of a Grand Prix with a jump off. And I think there's about 10 to 15 combinations that we could put forward as that we wouldn't be surprised if they won individual goals.
Yeah.
And the problem in inverted commas that King Edward has is how much time he spends in the air in a jump off. So, if you're looking at, he very likely will be favored on the prediction center going into the Olympics. But if you actually think about it and think of Julien Ibayar and his jump off record, and he's almost unbeatable. If you look at Martin Fuchs and Leonie, Richard Vogel, there's so many combinations that, if it is just a jump off, would you put them ahead? But then if you turn it back to Henrik and you go, he missed out on a medal last year, about 3 years ago in Tokyo. He's not going to want to do that again, and he's going to take every single risk to go as fast as he can if he is in a jump off. And I think at that point he would almost rather have a fence down or a rail or whatever than to be double clear and not get a medal.
Oh yeah,
you remember Gothenburg?
That's so brutal.
Gothenburg.
I know, and he's beatable, and we've seen it this year. Like, he has been beaten.
Yeah. Although I will say, I think Henrik's jump offs on King Edward have gotten a lot faster. Like, if you talk about where he was at 3 years ago in Tokyo, the speed at which he's able to achieve in a jump off has gotten much, much faster. The air time I think is still there, but I think if you see what his time was in Den Bosch and things like that, there were some really fast jump offs that he's been able. Okay, he didn't win in Den Bosch, but he was super close. But he's gotten faster and faster. So I know that's in the back of his head for sure going in. Like you said, I don't think he's gonna want to have double clear and miss out on a medal.
You guys would know it much more in terms of what it feels like to sit in a horse and what it feels like to have to ride to a horse's strengths, how to come on. But I think maybe it was a Clip My Horse did the side by side. It might be 2 years. It must be 3 years ago now in Geneva, top 10 final, when Explosion and King Edward took each other on, and they jumped off against each other, and they put them both onto the same camera, and you actually just saw Explosion at like his full jump off strength in terms of that ground speed that they cover. And I think there's no doubt um, when you watch Richard Vogel at the moment with United Touch, that's there. And actually also a Geneva winner, and also a horse that I think, like when you think about Geneva, it feels very different to Aachen, and it maybe somewhere in between for Versailles, which is going to be United Touch horse is just like
It just
he
eats the
has
ground up. I mean, there's no,
yeah,
I
but
mean,
he's quick enough to get out
second,
of he gets out of
yeah.
the combinations as well. But he was actually like 1.82 up as he went over the last, and he had that time, like he made up time all of the same time that Thimi and Chikaria made up. And like we didn't see the clock, the split at the end because the rail comes, or I definitely didn't pay attention to it at the end because the rail comes. But like there's no doubt for me that he's over 2 seconds clear. It's probably closer to three, I would say. On a guess, it's probably closer to three, in faster than Thimi.
I think it was
And
actually 1.1, but
I thought it was, but I mean, it was definitely one. Maybe something happens. It was definitely like 1.8 at the rail as he comes over, as at the second last split, at the last fit, at the last split. But my gut feeling was he's so he's so fast that I think,
he's so fast because he covers ground so much more. I mean, we all joke in the sport and we say
yeah, yeah.
it's the sport, and then there's United Touch because it's like another animal. It's not, you don't even feel like you're watching the same species. It doesn't feel like a fair fight.
Yeah, it's an amazing challenge that he's like. I mean, there must have been times when Richie's had to really think like the whole sport is doing this in five and I'm doing it in four, and like it doesn't always go right, as we know, and like it has to be a mental battle to think like ride more like everybody else, and then suddenly he turns probably the weakness into a strength by actually just riding his own way. And now like I mean the toughest 160 on ratings last year was Geneva, and his high performance ratings, United Touch high performance ratings, are the standout in the sport. When we talk about the pressure for Van Eckerman and King Edward and the legacy there, part of our challenge at Equiratings is going to be to ensure you recognize the greatness. This is a generational talent without getting too drawn into the horses that will come. And I don't mean come and go, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, but United Touch has put up the biggest performance rating win in Geneva, but he's not a double World Cup winner and a world champion.
Yeah.
And he's not eaten up what 20, 25, 30, 160s in a year, maintaining 85% clear rates. Like what King Edward has done has pushed the sport again in a way that I think Explosion did and Big Star did.
Yeah,
And
100%.
maybe
Legacy wise.
Casal probably did it to some degree. And I think we're gonna pull in here that like Steve Gardan, Dynamix are in incredible form, and the European champion will go and probably be one of the biggest challengers to King Edward. I think United Touch will be a huge challenger if it comes down to jump off speed. Of course, Epiard and the French generally, I think, come into the picture. I would. I heard that Henrik quoted Eckratings saying that he only has a 7 or 8% win chance when he was asked about favoritism recently on SVT, the Swedish TV channel, and he quotes the fact that it's sub 10%. And I was pleased with that because actually that's him recognizing and educating the sport that I am a favorite, but this is a sport that still gives me a 90% chance of losing. And I know I'm repeating that, but I think it's so
Oh,
important that we say that and we feel that the sport, the format gives me a 90% chance of losing. You can still be the best. You can still be great. And he is a generational talent, as I say. But because of how good our sport is, this is the opportunity to tell the sport that even the very, very best have to go up against the format, have to go up against, as you say, a totally different challenge in Vogel and United Touch, have to go up against the French at home, the French, known for their speed, particularly when it gets to jump offs. That's the story. That's the opportunity that you have to tell amazing stories in jumping. You don't get that if you're talking about the 100 meters or you're talking about swimming, where if there's someone coming in there on world record times, you look at the generational talents in 100 meters, and it's like in our time, it's Usain Bolt. but there isn't really a story of jeopardy going into the 100 meters in, say, the 10 years that Bolt enjoyed his greatness, because Bolt won. The challenge was, how much did he win by? Whereas our generational talent doesn't get that. He actually gets a 10% win chance. So what we have to do as a sport is protect that legacy by understanding it and talking about it in a fair way. He will remain probably the greatest of all time, even if it's Dynamics or United Touch who wins the Olympics. And I think that's the fairness that the numbers should bring to the King Edward story. If he wins it, okay, it's another special moment. But if he doesn't win it, I think he is beyond the Olympic winner, whoever the Olympic winner. He will remain beyond them for now, based on what he's achieved.
Yeah, I think the legacy of him will prevail regardless of the sort of results that he has. So pressure or not, that horse.
I think it should be pressure off for me. It should be pressure off rather than pressure on.
Because he's going to come in there no matter how he does. He's still walking away as the #1 horse rider combination in our sport for years to come.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just when you watch it and enjoy, there's a lot that all the others have to do to go and do that. But that sport, that's not to say they're not going to do it. Like, I stood watching in Aachen this week, and I stood beside people who know so much about the sport, and because I only have the numbers, but I'm good with the numbers, but that I don't have the other. I don't know all of the feel and horsemanship, and I don't have the eye that all of you guys will have. So no one really minds me asking them wild and mad questions all the time, because they know that I can do my bit, and then they'll just tell me all the rest. And I'm so interested to learn about it, and I'm talking to them about what they see and who's the greatest. And we ended up in a conversation about Cian O'Connor and his on-demand performance, the ability to take a horse that has lower ratings but constantly pull out. We talked about it last year, Charlotte, in the Nations Cup, when he took Eve de Lee to the Nations Cup in Dublin. She was 9 at the time. She'd jumped one clear in Rotterdam, or maybe a double clear in Rotterdam at 160. Then she goes away for 2.5 months, maybe 3 months, and comes back and jumps, was it 4 and clear in the Nations Cup in Dublin? Now, in Dublin, a lot of people think that's just because it's Cian O'Connor, but when you're in the sport, it's actually Cian O'Connor on a 9-year-old. And I think you could say the same about Morris in terms of where they were at the start of this year. You could say the same probably about Kilkenny. You could say the same about the horse he took on Sunday in Fermoy. And so as we were watching this horse jumper, one of his horses jump, I ended up talking to someone about generational talent riders, and he came up and they said there's only a couple of people really that match what Cian O'Connor can do. And of course I'm like, who? Because I've only got the numbers, so tell me, who are they? And the person this guy said was Gurda. He said Steve Gurda is the other on-demand rider in the sport. And Steve Gurda, I'd say even Keane would admit, Steve Gurda is riding a better horse at this, in Dynamics de Belém. I think you've got something really special.
Yeah.
So the reason I say that, he deserves a huge amount of respect, as if he's former Olympic champion, isn't he? And then you've got your European champion, and you're riding a horse, one of the, probably was it second rated now, Charlotte, in the sport on our ratings, Dynamics. Second on ratings, right there on form. I think he can push King Edward. I mean, in terms of the legacy and how it'll be remembered, and this could be the starting point if he become a European champion and Olympic champion. But for now, I think regardless of what happens, the Swede remains the talent of sport of today.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's amazing though. What I always love, and I always try to remind people of with the Olympics, is that what makes the Olympics special in itself, different from other senior championships that we see, is that in every sport, because it's clean slate on the medal day, it's who is the best on the day. And the Olympics takes obviously the consistency and the long-term career form to get to the games. So you're looking at the pinnacle of an apex of species and of everything, and you're looking at top sport. But the Olympics is about who is the best on the day. And then you go back and you look at Steve Gerda and you look at Kia, and you talk about these are the riders able to perform on demand. And then you look at you know, horse rider combinations that we love, that we see consistent. But I mean, King Edward jumped a 5-star Grand Prix a couple of weeks ago with 4 down.
Yeah,
He had 4 down, and then you say, okay, I mean, that's a 5-star Grand Prix. For sure, he wasn't thinking he was going in there with 4 down. So you talk about somebody performing on the day. What makes the Olympics so spectacular is that it's going to be who peaks on that day. And that's what the Olympics is about. The Olympics isn't about long-term form. Everybody at the games already has shown that they are at the top of the sport. And now we're looking at who can do it when it matters for this day. And I think that's what makes the Olympics so unique and so special and so unexpected, right? Especially in a sport, like you say, where the win chances are so low already, it almost opens up the whole field to being able to win on that day. And as a spectator, that makes it even more exciting because every single one that walks in the ring can win.
If you bring them into the story.